Hey there, and welcome to another Fluent English Conversation, the podcast where I talk about a different subject every episode so you can practice your listening skills, learn new vocabulary, and improve your English. For each episode, remember that I prepare a transcript for you that you can download for free, so check the description and you'll be able to find that link and download it so you can study along with me. The subject I've chosen for today's episode is Bonfire Night, or Guy Fawkes Night, and that is a celebration every year on the 4th of November, which is today. Hey there guys, sorry to interrupt, it's Future Sam here. I've just been editing the video and I noticed that I made a mistake. Bonfire Night is the 5th of November, not the 4th. This video will be coming out on the 4th, but the celebration is actually on the 5th. And I can't really understand why I forgot that, because there was always a rhyme that we learnt at school, which was, remember, remember, the 5th of November, gunpowder, treason and plot. And that's the rhyme that they taught us to remember, that it was always on the 5th of November. But I just wanted to correct that just to make sure that you had all of the accurate information. So I hope that's helpful, and we're going to go back to the podcast. And that is to celebrate something really strange. It's something we learnt at school, and it's kind of one of the reasons why I think history lessons in schools are a little bit weird, because we spend a lot of time focusing on history which is from either a really long time ago or really specific things, and actually we don't learn a lot of very useful or more recent history. But anyway, my commentary or my disapproval of the current educational system in the UK is a different kettle of fish. What we were talking about is Guy Fawkes Night. Guy Fawkes is a guy called Guy from a very long time ago. I don't remember the exact date, and all of this information I'm giving you is from what I remember when we studied it at school. So it's going to be a very general overview of the idea. But basically, he was part of a group of people, or he was the leader of a group of people who wanted to blow up the Houses of Parliament in London. There was a conspiracy plot, and they set up, underneath the Houses of Parliament, they set up lots of gunpowder, and they were going to try and blow up the whole of the government and, start a revolution or something along those lines. They didn't, and they got caught. Then they were, killed and whatever. And then from that point on, there's always been a celebration, if you like, something to remind everyone not to do that kind of thing again. The history of it is kind of lost, like a lot of traditions now. The original history maybe is not so clear in the current celebration. That's why we tend to call it Bonfire Night, because that's really what most of the celebration is about. So a bonfire is a really big fire that you'd usually have at some special events and things like that. Traditionally, you would have like how do we describe it? Like a Guy Fawkes puppet or a Guy Fawkes mannequin, maybe, that is put on the fire and burned, and as a nod to the history. But really, there's a big bonfire, there's usually some food, and then there's lots of fireworks. So people also tend to call it Fireworks Night, because the real big draw of it is the fireworks. Also, we used to have something where we call them sparklers, and it's like a little stick that you hold in your hand and you light the end, and then it sort of sparks at the top until it gets down to the bottom, and then it stops. So we call them a sparkler because it sparks. As a kid, I always really enjoyed Fireworks Night. It was something I always really looked forward to because I love the fireworks. We always used to go and grab a burger or a hot dog or something like that while we were there. There were always snacks. Yeah, I just got to spend time outside late, so it always felt a little bit special, because obviously it was after normal bedtime, so that was always a little bit fun. A couple of times at home, we actually tried to do like a fireworks display in our garden. It never really worked very well. And because fireworks are so expensive, it always seemed a little bit disappointing when you spent a lot of money and actually you only got a couple of fireworks. And there were a couple of times where the fireworks weren't put in the ground properly, or they were attached to the fence of our garden, and then they kind of shot off and we all had to kind of dive inside so we weren't blown up by fireworks, which obviously doesn't sound particularly safe, and the reason why I would never really want to do it myself. The main events, though, were held, and they still are held, all over the place. They're held at big cricket grounds and bowls clubs and any football clubs, anywhere where there's a load of empty space where they can set up fireworks, and they can also set up like fairground rides, seem to be quite popular at the moment. And you would tend to go there and just basically wait for the big fireworks display. So usually their fireworks display is all set up, everyone would stand there and watch it, and then afterwards it would just be a huge crowd of people leaving. So it's quite a weird celebration that you literally just go there to watch a couple of fireworks and then go home. It's not like New Year where there's the big countdown or anything like that. So a very British thing. And although it's something that we celebrate every year, it's not actually a public holiday. And this idea of public holidays, I think, ties in really nicely with an article that I read a little while ago. And it was talking about how in the UK specifically, it feels like we need more public holidays because we only have 8 per year, if I remember correctly. So we have 2 for Christmas, 1 for New Year, 2 for Easter, we have 2 in May and 1 in August. So that makes 8. And they were saying that basically from the end of August until Christmas in December, there are no public holidays. None of the celebrations that we have every year actually are marked by a bank holiday. And we call them bank holidays in the UK because it was traditionally the only day when the bank was closed apart from Sunday. But if you hear somebody say bank holiday, what they mean is public holiday. It's basically exactly the same thing. And if you ever see a British calendar, it'll be really interesting to know that even within the UK, there are different public holidays depending on where you live. There are some which are present across the whole of the United Kingdom, some that are only in England, some that are only in Scotland. So for example, in January in Scotland, they have Burns Night, which is to celebrate the famous Scottish poet. We don't have that celebration in the UK because it's a Scottish celebration. In Northern Ireland, they also have lots of other holidays and celebrations which we don't have here. When you see the calendar, it often says, for example, summer bank holiday, and then there'll be different ones depending on where it is you live and stuff like that. But back to the article that I was describing, the author or the writer was talking about how it feels like we need a bit more pride in our celebrations. So we have Bonfire Night, we also have Remembrance Sunday on the 11th of November, and other celebrations like that, which actually could be memorialised with a public holiday, and not just for very odd occasions like the coronation, which obviously only happens once in a very long time, depending on obviously how long the monarch lives. And I kind of like the idea. I think it would be nice, although the way that holiday works in a normal employment, obviously I don't have a normal job, so I'm excluded from this one. In the UK, we have something called Statutory Holiday Allowance, which is for people in employment in a company. They have a legal right to a certain amount of holiday, paid holiday. And it's normally 28 days, including public holidays. Automatically you take those 28 days, remove 8 for all public holidays. Then most companies close between Christmas and New Year, but they force you to use some of your holiday for that closure. So even if they close for like a whole week, they actually make you use 5 days for Christmas. And you don't have the choice. You can't always go in and work if the office is closed. It's just the way they organise it, and you actually have no choice. And in the companies I've worked at before I was a teacher, it worked that way. So I would have, let's say, 15 days a year, which I could choose to use whenever I wanted or whenever fit with the other holidays and the work that we had going on. So it's not a huge amount of time. I know there are places that have worse holiday setups. So that would be my only real problem with adding more public holidays, is actually if companies close during those public holidays, then you would actually lose the flexibility of booking your holiday when you wanted if you worked in a company. But, you know, it just depends on how the company does it, and maybe that would change. Bonfire Night, back to the original topic for today, I think is something that's always going to be something quite special for me, because I have lots of memories of going there with my grandparents and my brother, and we always used to buy a load of sparklers and, you know, run around in the garden. And one of the things that you could do with the sparklers is that when you move them very quickly, they would leave a trail of light, especially because it was very dark. And we always used to try and like write messages or draw shapes and things like that. And it's something that I would really like to do with my family now. Although the idea of being the adult and having to drive there and park and find my way through the crowd is maybe not so attractive. But, you know, you have to do these things. And there we have it for today. A short discussion on Bonfire Night or Guy Fawkes Night or Fireworks Night or whatever you want to call it, and my experience of it and a little bit of the history from what I remember from school. So I hope you found this really interesting and useful, and there's been some interesting phrases that you've learnt along the way. If there are any particular topics or events that you'd like me to discuss in a future episode, put a comment below the video and I will add them to my list. So have a fantastic week, have a great day learning English, and I will speak to you very soon.